Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to. I got a hair look that just won't go down. Welcome to season 5 and episode number 739 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Do. Always 100% Canadian. There we go. That's better. Today, recording day is Wednesday, September 17th, 2025, and I am looking out the window and I am seeing little wisps of white on a very light blue background, almost robin egg blue, rather than deep, when you get that sunny day, that deep, bright blue. But it looks like it's going to be a lovely day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Misfit Mysteries from Corbin Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and cubs, how is your mental health doing today? I'm doing well. Yesterday was feeling slightly under the weather. My head was very congested, and I don't typically have allergies, environmental ones, so that's kind of strange. And I was just dragging a lot. Yesterday evening I was supposed to go play volleyball with my beaver sweetie and some friends, and it was like I really want to go. I want to do this social thing. I really do. My tank is so empty. So I decided not to go. And then after volleyball, there's usually some social thing. We'll go grab a munch or something, right? And my beaver sweetie and I made an arrangement that I would text him around that time and let him know if I was going to come for a nosh. And again, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I really want to go. I want to do some social thing. And I really want to go to bed. And when somebody texts you and you are both engaged in conversation, right? You're both there at the same time because you've been answering, and then somebody asks a question like this. So, it was like, are you coming? I really want to go, but I'm dragging. So is that a yes or a no? And nothing comes for a while. That was me going, okay, yes, I'm coming. I'm going to push through. And as I'm about to type it, it's like, but I am really freaking tired. Like I can feel myself just like, getting heavier and heavier. So I'm not going to make it through. So I ultimately decided not to go. And about 15 minutes after I sent that, I actually went to bed. So at something like 9:15, 9:30 yesterday. I was just done. And my head hit the pillow, and I don't really remember anything else, to be totally honest. So I must have been completely zonked because I normally, I remember some time before I try to fall asleep, and I don't remember anything. I just remember going to bed and waking up. So yeah, I have no idea, but I'm waking up this morning feeling better. So I don't know. Maybe just a bit. I am a little still congested here, actually. I can hear it in my voice when I'm speaking. But yeah, just my get up and go got up and left yesterday. Was pretty much all that there was to it. Hopefully it's back because tonight it's rehearsal night and it's the first dance rehearsal. And well, that's what I'm here for, right? So I'm here for the dancing, baby. Got to get some shoulders in it. So, want to have the energy. And of course, that's, of course, because it's a weekday, it's going to be in the evening. On the weekend, it's during the day. So, I hope I'm not falling asleep at 6:30 tonight as I'm supposed to be trying to shake my groove thing. Anyway. Let's see who's here. Kids and Cubs. We have Kit Uncover with us. We have Kit Elaine, Kit Hyper T007. Bom dia Xienxie. And you've changed it on me today, however, uh, saying here, I'm going to change it up today. Bom dia todas pessoas. Hopefully I got that one better. All right. Let's see who else do we have here? Bite your tongue, Mr. Beaver. We have Kid Bucky here. Hello, hello, hello. I like that. I know Todas is everyone. I'm going to guess Pessoas is my posse. Probably not, but I like the way you think. We have Kit Grace with us saying good morning all. And who else do we have here? Kit Wishful is with us. Hey, Kit Swanky Frankie is also with us. This is some good stuff here. We have we have Kit Tom with us. Hello. We have Kit Jenny. We have Miss Shadika with us. And good morning to the family. Kit Hyper T 007. I nailed it. Yes. I've been practicing. I told you. Promise made, promise kept. Now it's whether or not I'll be able to retain it. Sometimes I'm not too fast. Let's put it that way. Okay, who else do we have? Yes, of course. And if Pessoas is people, of course. There you go. All right, and those are the kits that we have with us today. All right, today we are going to be talking about things financial because the latest inflation data came in, and we have the Bank of Canada, because it's September 17th, it's going to make its interest rate decision, I think 9:45 this morning Eastern time. And, you know, there has been some expectation since the beginning of the year that there would be about 5 or 6 rate cuts this year, or 4 or 5 rate cuts this year. We've had some, but they stopped in March, and there's been nothing since. And for the last few months, it's been will they, won't they? And everybody seems to the data up until the inflation data yesterday seemed to be indicating that there were increasing odds of a rate cut, but I believe that the last time we talked about it, it had increased from 43% to 48%. Then we got the job numbers come out, and I think that's what increased it to 48%. Then the GDP numbers come out, and the last one that we were waiting for is inflation data, which came out yesterday. So they don't have a lot of time to factor that latest data in to consider it in order to make the rate cut decision. But they're pretty sure about where they're going to lean, and then they're just looking for the inflation data to either confirm, or if there's a surprise, to make them go, "Oh wow, wait a minute here." But that decision is going to come at 9:45 tonight. 9:45 tonight. 9:45 this morning. Oh, it's gonna be one of those shows, isn't it? Okay, we'll just roll with it. You know what? This might be a moment for me to let my tongue catch up with my brain and take a moisture break. Ah, there we go. Ah, my God. Gee, it's gonna be a fun morning. All right. So, Um, 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 so yes, the inflation numbers, that's what we were talking about. They came out yesterday and it was slightly better than expected. Now, what was expected is that the number was going to go up because it was at 1.7 before. That's the headline number of it. And it was expected to go up to 2%. So the expectation was to the rise, and it did rise, but it rose to 1.9%, which was slightly better than expectations for the overline top number, the overall top line number. I'm now mixing syllables. Gonna be a fun show. According to Craig Lord of the Canadian Press, most economists believe the Bank of Canada has a green light to cut interest rates on Wednesday after a last minute inflation report showed price pressures were relatively tame in August. Annual inflation rose to 1.9% last month. Statistics Canada said Tuesday. That's up from 1.7% in July, but short of economists' expectations for 2% inflation heading into the release, as I just mentioned. Benjamin Reitzes, BMO's managing director of Canadian rates and macro strategist, said there's nothing in this report to take the Bank of Canada off track from a rate cut. The acceleration in headline inflation was near expectations, and core metrics, closely watched because they strip out volatility, did not show signs of creeping higher. Annual core inflation figures held steady to around 3%, and shorter term trends are below that mark. Quote, as long as we don't see any worsening there for now, I think they're okay cutting rates. So that sentence there, when they say they're steady around 3% and shorter term trends are below that mark, in other words, that's indicating that if the shorter term trends, say that three times fast, are below 3% and the average rate is 3%, given it's an annualized number as the uh, furthest of the 12 months drop off and the most recent of the 12 months factor in, that number is slated to decrease over the next period until there's a change in that, until the short-term trend uh, goes above the mark. In other words, so that's an improving situation. That's a long-winded way to say it's an improving situation for that number. The bank held its benchmark interest rate steady at 2.75% in three consecutive decisions as it waited for more information on how the United States tariff dispute would affect the economy and inflation. So basically, because um, we didn't know what the full effects were going to be, and a lot of that has to do with other behaviors such as stockpiling and when people were stockpiling their inventories to try and buy as much of the things before there were tariffs, or making early purchases of bigger cost items. So some people decided to buy their cars earlier because before the worst of the tariffs would hit. So those created some differences in the GDP numbers, and that there were some swings that we said on the show, that you have to, it's hard to go from quarter to quarter and see some type of trend because there are some huge um, uh, extenuating factors. I don't know if I'm mistranslating something from French when I'm saying that. Uh, but, uh, things that are just completely not happening in normal times that are affecting what is going on here, particular consumer behavior or retailer behavior at this moment. So, you can't really read a trend from those swings, right? Uh, because they are being affected by extraordinary events. So, uh, these numbers that we are getting here, the Bank of Canada wanted to get as much data as possible. And since the worst that was expected from the tariffs, because when stuff was announced in February, I believe they were announcing a 25% universal tariff on everything, and that's not what we got. So that situation being better than the Bank of Canada had originally expected, uh, made it such that they had more time to consider, which it would explain why it is that those last 3 months, when people were doing the will they, won't they ultimately decided on won't they, because things were stable enough because we didn't get that worst case scenario, and that would give them more time to consider. But now it seems that with this last piece of data, and the fact that some of these inventories are depleting, and we're seeing what's happening with the number stateside as well, um, that we probably have to start to making some other considerations. Now we also have to understand here that interest rates in the United States are higher than they are in Canada, so the United States hasn't started its cutting process yet. There's some heavy expectations that they will probably do it at their next meeting as well, especially since there is a member of the board that left the bank, and the president of the United States appointed someone else to take that spot, which could create a situation. Um, uh, the way that it's been described is that it breaks the wall because the person that is there, it also occupies a position within the Trump administration, which is not a good thing, not a good signal to send to the markets. And of course, the president of the United States was trying to get another board member fired, female and black. Go figure, claiming that she had misreported stuff about her houses, which is kind of rich considering 34 felonies for doing similar things with his businesses, right? But hey, Cauldron calling the teapot black here. And turns out, of course, it seems that it's going through courts and all that type of stuff because she contested it. She says, I'm going nowhere because you're lying about me, and that it was all trumped up things. So it doesn't look like he's going to be able to get rid of her. And uh, yeah, he's trying to get that majority on that Fed, so that he can tie the Fed, basically take away the Fed's independence, which would send a terrible sign to the market. But regardless, what he's doing in the United States with the economy is basically creating a situation, especially the job numbers, where the Fed is probably going to have to do it just because of what's happening to the economy now. So um, he doesn't need to rig the board anymore because he's created the economic conditions that will get him the interest rate cuts that he so wants. But he's doing it at such a price that so many people are going to suffer. Um, and the reason this matters, particularly in the case of the United States, is because um, with the economy as it is right now, right, we're looking at the stock markets and they're doing really, really well, right? And people are wondering, like, given that everybody is predicting disaster because central banks are cutting rates, usually that's not good, right? It's not a sign that things are going well with the economy. Why is the stock market going up so much, right? So part of it is because it's only certain sectors that are being severely hit, right? Like the tech sector, for example, is not being that severely hit yet by these types of tariffs. Um, Also, um, the fact that it is growing, when we were talking earlier on a previous show about you're going to have to segment um, demographics to get the full story of what this is doing to the economy. The people at the bottom of the pyramid is, you know, that they have less income and more of their income is going on food and housing. Well, it's not 1.9% inflation for them, number one. And number two, um, they're less likely to have stocks. If you have stocks, you're maybe not so worried about the future of the economy right now because, I mean, things are skyrocketing, right? If you're invested in gold, your precious metals, you're really, really happy right now, right? Um, you know what's coming, but you know you're you've got more cushion to be able to absorb it. But that's not the reality, you know, further down the ladder. So there are a lot of things to consider here when we're making these decisions. And of course, you know, the interest rate is, as we mentioned, is just one big blunt tool, right? So the inflation story, getting back to that, is, um, it's very, very uneven for everyone. And it's affecting uh, different markets uh, and different demographic demographic strata in very, very different ways. So again, it's normally we just look at the top line number and then we go, but these days, because everything's so much more complicated, you always have to go and see other things because just the general number is far from telling the whole story. A weaker economy means less pressure on prices going forward, Reitz has explained. Financial market odds of an interest rate cut on Wednesday held above 95% after the inflation release, according to LSEG data and analytics. So that's basically the swap markets, if you ever hear about that. They're basically uh, the expectation of a rate increase on this number then just shot up. So it's not like 100%, but 95%, 83%, somewhere in there. Um, whereas a couple of weeks ago it was just 48%. So this data showing you know a weaker economy, uh, it, it's being factored in to all the other stuff, especially with this slight rise in unemployment rate to 7.1. In the United States they're still at 4.5. That's another difference between us. Um, but 7.1, when we were expecting the worst in February, we're expecting way over 10 for the nation. But again, disparities. If you live in Windsor, like we said, the unemployment rate there is 11%. But if you're in Quebec City, the unemployment rate is 4.4%. If you're in Victoria, it's like 5%. Right. So again, because of the way these things are hitting and the various sectors, the situation is extremely uneven throughout the country. I think that's the word I've been looking for all this time, uneven, to try and describe this. Scotiabank, TD Bank, CIBC, and National Bank are all expecting a rate cut today. Not all forecasters are convinced, though. RBC economist Abby Zhu said in a note to clients Tuesday that the central bank must strike a fine balance in its rate decision. Early signs of a third quarter recovery in the economy's stickiness in core inflation, resilient consumer spending, and planned fiscal stimulus from the federal government's upcoming fall budget could push inflation higher again in the months ahead, she warned. Quote, today's inflation report does little to sway that assessment, and we continue to think that the Bank of Canada's decision will be a close call between a 25 basis point cut to the overnight rate and a hold. The Bank of Montreal is expecting 2 quarter point cuts at some point, but Reitz says the pace of further easing will depend on upcoming inflation reports. Statistics Canada, meanwhile, said stubbornness at the gas pumps was fueling the higher August inflation reading. Gasoline prices rose 1.4% month over month in August as higher refining margins offset lower crude costs, Stats Can said. The price of gas was still down 12.7% annually in August. The end of the consumer carbon price has deflated costs for motorists in spring. But the decline fell short of July's 16.1% drop, pushing the headline inflation rate higher. So here what they're basically saying is that from July of 2024 to July 2025, the price of gas had dropped 16.1%. That's one of the big reasons that our inflation rate went down. At the end of August, uh, that was 12.7%. And now, so um, basically, and if you've been on social media, you've been seeing this a lot. People are wondering, hey, the price of gas is now suddenly back to where it was before we removed the carbon tax, and we're not on winter gas yet. What the hell? Uh huh. Right? It's what pretty much everybody was saying would happen, right? You would have to uh, remove the tax. And of course, because it was such a high profile thing, there would need to be a visible reduction at the pump, or else, there would have been a mass revolt. But, over time, a little creep here, a little creep there, a little creep here, it gets clawed back. It gets clawed back. So, and the price of food has not gone down. So there's a lot of people asking questions of Pierre, you said if we cut the carbon tax, the price of food would go down. Well, now we've cut the carbon tax, and the price of gas is still the same as it was before cutting the carbon tax, and the price of food hasn't gone down. What the hell? Yeah, maybe it was because all the experts that kept on putting out the reports that's saying that the carbon tax, as it affects the price of food, was negligible, were right. But you were told to not listen to the experts because the experts were all liberal, right? Or paid, right? Or somehow ethically corrupt, or just not good at their jobs, or whatever excuse was needed to get you through the day. But now the price of gas is the same, the price of food has gone up, and if you used to get the rebate, you don't anymore. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that are going, well, let me, let me say, maybe not a lot of people, but there's a certain number of people that are saying, we don't want to say we told you so, but we told you so. And then there's a lot of people going, say, we told you so. So I've been seeing a lot more of the people going, see, we told you so. Um, but yeah, if you strip out gas prices, inflation came in at 2.4% in August, down a tick from the past 3 months. So the inflation rate without gasoline, of all items, without not including gas, is coming down. But because gas prices is going up, right? The core rate, or that the top line rate, is going up. So it's mostly because of the price of gas. Reitz warned that rising gas prices might continue to push the headline inflation number in September, but added that the Bank of Canada will largely look through those influences as it sets monetary policy. He said the central bank might worry if those fuel costs start to skew Canadians' inflation expectations higher, however, because while numbers don't care about your feelings, the economy does. So if it starts affecting consumer confidence, so then, Bank of Canada might be expected to act. Monetary policymakers tried to keep consumers and business expectations of inflation anchored to the central bank's 2% target over the long term. Otherwise, higher expectations can lead consumers to spend more and businesses to freely pass on higher costs, fueling inflation in a self-fulfilling cycle. The same issue could arise for food inflation, he said, if Canadians continue to see their grocery bills rising. Quote, That's one of the challenges I think that the Bank of Canada faces at the moment. Food in particular, something you buy every day, has continued to push higher, Reitzes said. Tuesday's inflation data shows it was a mixed bag at the grocery store last month. The cost of groceries rose 3.5% annually in August, up a tenth of a point from July, so the price of food is accelerating, and everybody needs to eat. StatsCan said price growth for meat accelerated 7.2% in August from 4.7% the previous month, as the cost of fresh and frozen beef surged 12.7%. Meanwhile, the cost of fresh fruit fell 1.1%, reversing course on a 3.9% gain in July, thanks largely to lower prices for grapes and cherries. Reitzes said Canadians should find some grocery relief at the margins from Ottawa dropping most of its retaliatory tariffs on the United States at the start of the month, but agriculture conditions are still volatile. Rising rents and mortgage interest costs remain the biggest factors pushing the annual inflation rate higher. Stats Canada said fewer back-to-school deals for cell phone plans meant prices for cellular services also rose on a monthly basis in August. Weak Canadian demand for visiting the United States last month, meanwhile, helped push prices for travel tours down 9.3% compared with a year ago, the agency said. So yes, I did misspeak earlier. Sorry. The two major drivers, because I said that there was only one, was gas and rent and mortgages. So those were the two main drivers, and of course, with the price of food rising. So some essential things, right? I mean, we all need to get around. So gas, right? Uh, we all need to eat, and we all need somewhere to live. So that 1.9 number, includes, everything else. So, furniture, clothes, that type of stuff. So the costs of those things seem to be going down, but food and lodging is going up. And of course, um, depending again on your living situations, right? Um, how that's going to affect you. Um, if you're renewing your mortgage, for example, this year, there's so many of us that are going to be renewing mortgages in the next 2 years, and I think maybe that 2 year window has already started. You know, the drops in interest rates from the central bank are going to help you. But if inflation keeps on rising, that won't affect your mortgage cost, right? It'll affect you if you're buying a home, but it won't affect your mortgage costs. But the price of your food is definitely going to be going up, and the price, let's say you do have a house, then odds are is that you have a car, I guess, and maybe you're heating with gas. So then you're affected with that in that sense if those prices keep going up. So it's different things for different people, and not to mention the cost of insurance, which is rising at a very high rate compared to other things. Um, so everybody, depending on your financial situation and where you are situated in the economy, is experiencing this very differently, um, because of all the different manners. Like I said, the stock market behaving in one way like this, and you're seeing your portfolio increase. So you think you can weather it, but you're seeing the prices rise at the grocery store. um, you know, you're looking at a cut of inflation rates, of cut of interest rates. So you're looking at your mortgage, the cost to finance your mortgage going down when you're going to have to renew, which means more money in your pocket. But you know, there's rising unemployment. Well, will that come and affect you at some point? So these numbers, it's really, really tricky dance. And this is what, when we're talking about consumer confidence and what your expectations for the economy is going to be, that are a lot of people that are feeling really nervous. And there's also the fact that given we haven't been hit by the potential worst case scenario, fortunately, because the United States is somewhat trying to respect Kuzma, um, doesn't necessarily mean that's always going to be the case. He's a little temperamental and mercurial. So I'm so yeah, uh, not the it's not the most secure time. um, but I mean, I'm laughing and it's a bit of a nervous laugh. Um, because on the show, I think we've talked about it a lot, when things were going a little haywire when we were coming out of COVID and we were having um, uh, supply crunches. I think what I think that's what they're called. There just wasn't enough things being produced and it wasn't be able to be the shipping routes were still somewhat disturbed and inventories were disturbed and people were willing to pay more to get it. So the prices were really skyrocketing. And then companies were seeing that people were willing to pay. So then you got the greed inflation that they said, well, let's see how much these fuckers are willing to pay. And then they would just jack up the prices on us, right? Um, when we were going through all of that period, like this, and then the interest rates were, rising, so I saw the price of, and we were on a variable rate mortgage, I saw the rate of our mortgage go up a lot, like close to 50%. In that period of time, the cuts in interest rates that we've had so far have made it such that I am breathing easier, right? Um, but I know the reason for the cuts in the interest rates are not necessarily good. I mean, at that point, it was better because inflation rate. It was because inflation was becoming was coming better under control, and we did get that soft landing. But and we were at 2.75, which is the place that uh, 2.5 to 3% is sort of where you would want a central bank rate to be. It gives you enough room to cut in case there's a recession and like this, and it's not ridiculously high. Um, but when you get world events that can shake you, like COVID, for example, um, you know, sometimes 3% is not enough. I mean, I think we got to 0.25%, was almost at the, two more rate cuts. It was at the point where the bank was paying you to take money, right? So, so, you want, you never want your central bank rate really to be that close to zero. Um, so if we're at 2.75 and we're starting to cut, and the worst of what's happening in the United States hasn't hit yet. And then if you add to that, the saying, when the United States catches a cold or coughs, we catch a cold. Well, with the United States choosing to repeatedly punch itself in the balls economically, at some point that's going to affect the US economy in such a way that there's going to be less demand for our goods. And not exactly sure that we'll have been able to diversify away enough and get enough of the projects of national importance started by the time what the United States is doing to itself starts to hit it. When the consequences of that start to hit us. So the people in that article who are saying, well, maybe not right now, even though the overall market seems to be saying that, yes, there will be an interest rate cut right now, they have some pretty sound reasoning here for having that point of view. Um, we could not cut at this particular time, right? We wouldn't be that much worse off. And, we could see if there's um, something else that's coming along. Like, who was it again? It was the lady from RBC, Abby Zhu. Um, wasn't convinced because, for example, the planned stimulus from the federal government's upcoming fall budget, maybe the Bank of Canada would want to wait until that happens to have more certainty before deciding it's going to make a cut or not. Um, I was listening to an economist, I think it's Francis Donald or McDonald, who was talking about interest rate cuts. And she was saying that when the central bank makes one, it's usually not just one. Usually they'll come in like a small group. There might be two or three, not necessarily month after month, but it could be month on, month off, month on, month off. But they usually come in small groups here. And because the impact of those rates have to work themselves through the economy, so they start to show up later, about a year to 2 years later. Um, it might be premature because we do have all the cuts that started around this time last year. Well, this is 1 year. They're starting to work their way in through right now. So, maybe you want to see what the impact of that is, and then wait till November and see how much money there is going to be put into these, how much bigger the deficit than initially forecast is going to be with the investment decisions that we are going to be making, starting with, the $9 billion for military, and the fact that we're, taking about $10 billion a year out of previously expected revenues out of the government coffers with the various tax cuts and the things that they're foregoing when they're not doing the capital gains thing anymore, and the income tax cut that they gave to pretty much everyone, which I still believe should have been a little more targeted, especially since we see what's happening with the inflation numbers here. But then again, they don't pay tons of taxes. They need programs and services as well to go with it. If you don't have a lot of money, thus Mr. Grizzly keeps on reminding us, what good's an income tax cut going to do you at some point? So yeah, that some of that income tax cut money might have been better invested in some support programs, considering what's happening with the economy and how it is unevenly targeting people. But that's money that we're foregoing, so we're foregoing some revenues, right? As we are taking on some costs, and then of course, there are going to be whatever planned cuts are going to come that we're still not exactly sure of. And of course, for you at home, what does a cut mean for your pocketbook if it happens to be in an area that affects you directly somehow? So it seems that the federal government is trying to do things in a way that won't go there. But at some point, you need to make the math, right? So when you're in the room and you're making the calculations and then deciding, what gets traded off and what gets factored in, there are costs to that down the line that may be incurred. So you want to be careful and thoughtful about those decisions if you have an overall objective of fiscal management. You don't want to make a cut that'll save 10 million here, but end up costing you and 22 million in damage that you have to clean up. That would not be a smart cut, right? So there's a lot to consider in this particular case. By the way, we got news that the budget will be coming down November 4th, so later than expected. It was very thought to be, or talked out loud to be coming in October. And I actually saw an interview with Stephen McKinnon, the government House leader, who was being asked whether or not the budget would come sometime in October. And so, well, I'm not one to scoop the Minister of Finance. I'll let him make that. And I'm thinking, okay, it's coming in November. Because if it was coming in October, the answer would have been an easy yes to that one. But yes, how much stimulus is going to be in that budget, and how will that affect inflation? So, this RBC economist is making a very good point that it might be wise for the Bank of Canada to wait until then, especially since it could be good to cut one now, but it would not be devastating if the interest rate was not cut now in any way. So why not wait? So if the bank is being a little more conservative, we might get a surprise. So even though the swap markets are expecting very, very highly that there will be a bank cut, that could also be a slight pressure tactic as well. You never know. But that's where people are betting on what essentially they're betting on what the Bank of Canada will do. There is a very strong case that could be made for holding off. So uh, even though the market is saying, yeah, it's pretty much a sure thing, there is still some actual suspense. So it'll be interesting to see what the bank says with the rate decision itself, but I'll be very interested in hearing the commentary this particular time around because I have a feeling it might be uh, there might be uh, more things spoken about as specifically as can be with central bankers. Uh, they have their own language. Um, but there might be some particular insights about what's to come because uh, I don't envy them. Let's put it this way, right? Because right now we're in this situation where, if things just continue to be like this, at least we know what to expect and we can adjust. But if the things keep on shifting as quickly as things have been shifting all the time, and we're still never really sure that the guy south of us isn't just going to lower the boom at one point and say, you know what, screw the Kuzma thing. I'm not respecting that anymore. Uh, what do you do? What do you do? How do you make a decision? How do you feel you have any solid ground under your feet at all? Right? I mean, that's one of the things that I see about what Prime Minister Mark Carney is doing in terms, okay, well, this we need to face the reality that from our partner or our frenemy from the South, that this is the situation they want. They want to create maximum instability and chaos so that we are completely on the back foot all the time. And so we're trying, to maintain our stability while being pushed on the back foot. And hopefully that will provoke some type of mistake from us or, something. They'll find the right button to press that will squeeze something particularly tight, and that will lead us to make some type of a concession. Uh, but they're like, it's like we're on an elevator and they're like pushing every button to try to see if any one of them is going to work on us. Um, So, I mean, we change processes here. We put a buy Canadian policy. We try, an industrialization policy. We activate those free trade deals that we have. We do the things that we can do, and that's what the prime minister is correct when he says we control the things we control. And with the United States, we try to buy as much time or do the things that we have to do to make sure that that big boom doesn't come down on us somehow without sacrificing too much. uh, you know Flattery seems to be a good way to delay things. Fortunately, in this case, it looks awful and it tastes terrible when we watch it happen, but it seems to be effective. He's still saying that the prime minister is a nice guy and all that kind of stuff, but you know, again, there's that can only be done at a certain speed, right? And then, there is bureaucracy, like the military project is all great and wonderful, but we haven't exactly been the best at procurement. So, right, we've execution has been an issue from time to time. Um, More than time. I'm being kind here when I'm saying time to time. So this not only, do we have to realign and reroute and, reorganize, um, but we need to hopefully be able to do it um, in a less than obstacle course way. Than we've been trying to do it before. Now, the fact that we are all motivated by a sense of urgency, right, also kind of helps. When you are completely stable economically, and your relationships with your closest neighbors are great. Uh, you know, if you take 7 years to make a decision on which plane you buy rather than 3 or 4, there's maybe no, you know, it's not as economically efficient and everything like that, but there's probably nothing horrible really that happens. Um, in this particular case, where you're sometimes wondering, well, is that annexation thing really real? You might want those planes sooner rather than later, and you might not want them from the people who are saying that they want to annex you. So, you know, uh, like I said, I don't envy anybody being a government at this particular time. It's it's a series of can't win decisions in some ways. And especially since you always have a yippee chihuahua on the side just sniping and saying that everything you do sucks and lying about everything you do, which doesn't make it easier. Especially, you're trying to rally the whole country to get it done. It's like, God. Um, it's not a job I would envy anyone. But it's a job you want a serious person doing. And fortunately, we have that at the moment. Uh, Hopefully, the right decisions will be made. Um, but yeah, this is, you know, how would I put it? I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination, right? Um, but I recognize I'm doing better. You know, I'm doing way better than the people that are in the encampments, right? I recognize. Um, I'm nervous, right? I don't have much debt beyond the mortgage. I do have savings. You know, my Beaver Sweetie works. I'm working. Uh, I'm nervous. I'll be honest. I'm nervous. 'Cause I do not put anything at all past the administration south of us. I am in full in. Expect the total unexpected, and don't be surprised if the worst happens. Eyes wide open mode when I'm looking at that administration. Because I'm nervous. Right? I cannot imagine. I think I can, but I probably can't imagine how it is being experienced by people who are not in as fortunate a situation as my Beaver Sweetie and I happen to be in. There's a lot going on. So, this Buy Canada thing that we are doing here, this boycott thing, there's a part of it that's patriotism. Yes. There's a part of it that's like, well, if you're going to treat us like that, why the hell would we want to do business with you? But there's a part of it that's also, this is something we can control in a world that seems to be going a little out of control, right? It was like when we were buying toilet paper during COVID. at least I'm not going to be reduced to, no matter how bad things get. It was a control. That's how desperate people were. It's like, if that's the little bit of control that I can have over my life or my dignity or whatnot like this, that's I'm going to take it. I'm just going to buy up all the toilet paper because hell no, I'm not going to be. I don't need to end that sentence. I think you know where it goes. The economy cares about your feelings. Right? So I'm it's one of the reasons that I keep on bringing up the point about I'm wondering, uh, the one question mark I have about the current government of Canada is whether or not the man from the boardroom has understood that, for those who are having a ridiculous percentage of their income go to only food and lodging, whether or not he understands that all these policies, these things that he's pursuing, while way down the road may possibly have some beneficial impact for them, they need to eat and be lodged now. And it's the lack of that element so far in the government policy and in the government playbook that has me concerned, because that is very fertile ground for the Conservative Party to exploit. So I'm hoping that there is stuff in the budget that addresses that particular segment of the population. It it is needed. It is very, very, very desperately needed at this particular point. And it's a it's one of those wise expenditures. It's one of those places that if you put some money now, there's a whole lot less money that you're going to have to put in later. So I just hope that there's somebody there that is making that case, or that the prime minister is aware or is attuned to it, and that there is something planned, because it's a topic I just don't hear anybody talking about at all. All right. Let's see. I did have was hoping I had a clip here for us. I do. Ha 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 ha. See, silly me. I was so tired last night that I wrote down get clip, but I didn't actually write down the timestamp to get the clip before I went to bed. I kill me. All right. There was if you watched Power and Politics yesterday, there was a great conversation between David Cochran and there were two panelists. Um, oh, I always mispronounce her name if I don't see it in front of me. Oh darn, Armine. Yeah. Oh God. Hold on, I'll get it. Yes, Armine Yanisian. I hope I pronounced that correctly, because I love it when she is. Whenever she was frequently on TV Ontario, but she's often on CBC as well, and she is really. Uh, I just like the way she has an overall view, um, and she expresses things very well, and she does often bring in uh, the perspective of the blind spot we may not be seeing. So there's a section of this conversation that I want to show you, because she mentioned something in it that I had not thought of before. with regards to the Bank of Canada and the interest rate, uh, because there's two things going on that are sort of moving in their unique ways, and the Bank of Canada needs to essentially um, pick something. Which one? It's almost like there's, uh, how would I put it? Two rabbits, and which one is the bank going to chase? Because you can't chase two rabbits at once. It's the best way I can kind of describe it. But here we go. I will bring it to you here.
Forward.
Right, but Armin, I mean, can you take an optimistic outlook, on the short to medium term on inflation, on interest rates, with everything that is happening with the job losses? Jimmy pointed out, I mean, manufacturing is getting hammered. I mean, can you be optimistic even if core goods are going in the right direction?
I think if the bank is cutting rates right now, they're not optimistic. What they're reading is we need to take out an insurance policy to minimize that kind of bleed in the job market and in the productive activities, and potentially to save some of the business ecosystem that has been relying on borrowing to get through this, and it's just getting super expensive. So we always talk about mortgages because that's what we do. But the bank has to worry about how the entire economic system is working. And I think if we cut rates, it's a sign that they don't think it's going in a very good direction, because they usually cut rates more than once and done, one and done. They usually, there's a little flock of cuts coming. We're already much lower than the United States. And as I said earlier, I think though we have lifted the tariff, a good deal of the retaliatory tariffs, we still have tariffs in place. And we are paying more for things. And people have done everything they can to try and buy time before, it's just to see what's going to happen. And what's going to happen is we're going to have a supply shock one way or another. And that's what happened after the pandemic reopening, where we just didn't have enough stuff and the prices of what we had went up. And I think we're beginning to see that in some goods, notwithstanding what Jimmy just said, which is correct. It will be very difficult for the bank then to reverse course. That's not what we want. When the only team that's in town whose one job is price stability suddenly looks like we don't know whether we should hike rates or drop rates. And that's the struggle they have. They have one bucket of water and they got two fires in two rooms. Which room are they going to go to first? The one where jobs are burning, or the one where prices are going up in smoke?
Right, and that stockpiling you mentioned earlier, a lot of U.S. manufacturers bought up a lot of raw materials and components they need to get ahead of Trump's tariffs, and those inventories, might last into the first quarter of next year, but we'll see then, right? Some of them could already be gone, and that's when you get the supply shocks. So Jimmy, in this context comes the first full budget in 506 days, the first budget of Prime Minister Mark Carney's administration and Minister Champagne's first.
I'll just stop there for a second before I go into what it is that he's going to say there. So you noticed how Armin basically put out here, the Bank of Canada can either do this thing or this thing, right? And that seeing the issue in that sense was a blind spot that I had until she said it. And it was sort of like, oh yeah, this decision is a little more complicated than one would originally think, because you got Doug Ford here on the side yelling again, going, "I've been clear like this. We need to reduce the interest rates at the bank." And it's like, Doug, darling. It's like, Mr. Mayor of Ontario, please. You're already busy trying to do every job except the one that you have. And premiers are usually not asked to speak on national monetary policy. So stay in your lane. You're not doing your job particularly well. So please don't try to take on more jobs that are not your own, that might be a little above your pay grade here. Okay? Thanks. All right. So talking about the budget here, let's see what this fine gentleman has to say.
budget as finance minister, they're talking about a substantial deficit, bigger than last year, which was about $50 billion, give or take, depending on what you include in there. I mean, what do you expect to see there, and what kind of a jolt does that have on things domestically?
Well, I think it's only going to be reflecting what we've already seen being announced by way of just meeting the 2% target this year. The tax cuts that were announced earlier in the year, the consumer carbon tax removal. So all those elements that were already announced will be reflected in that bottom line. On top of that, you have an economy that is obviously struggling. We had a contraction in the second quarter, and the second half of the year is expected to be sluggish. So certainly significant departures from the last document we have on hand, which was the fall economic statement of last year. So expectations and forecasts have evolved quite a bit and to the downside. So that will hit the top line in terms of revenue. So I think there's going to be a lot of that, a lot of the initiatives as it relates to building housing, elements on defense, and so it's been a very activist government, very bold announcements. I think what we're looking for at this point is really how we're going to at least mitigate the impact. And they've talked about 15%. Program spending cuts over the course of the next 3 years. But the question is how they're going to do that without cutting jobs within the public service. They're saying that they want to do it through attrition, but that might be a tall order to do without resorting to job cuts. And if they do resort to job cuts, then it will add further downward pressures on the economy. So it's going to be a difficult balancing act, I think.
Yeah, the Public Service Alliance of Canada, we've got a conversation with them coming up on the show. They already say about 10,000 jobs have been eliminated through the ending of contracts and term employment and these sorts of things. So even beyond attrition, there is some change there. But, we've heard numbers like $100 billion deficit, $80 billion deficit, stuff that outside of COVID times seems unimaginable. What's your expectations for the budget and what impact it might have?
Well, to Jimmy's point, we have $59.4 billion in tax cuts that have been promised to us that will emerge over the next 5 years. Plus, we are going to double. We found $9.3 billion extra cash in the couch cushions for defense spending this year. So the real tell this year is going to be how, if we're going to go into a deficit, it's going to be a military spending deficit and an own goal, right? We shot ourselves in the foot on cutting revenues at a time when we need to spend more because of everything that's happening. And so the big thing to watch for is how are they going to use the defense money? How will the defense money get used in the sense that is this military Keynesianism going to create employment and infrastructure in Canada? Or are we going to be buying new alliances with Europe and the UK to protect ourselves from crazy pants in the United States? As for the job cuts or the efficiencies that they're talking about finding, whether it's through attrition or through cuts,
right?
Don't forget, we are talking about the denominator keeps getting smaller. First of all, we're going to separate out operating and capital. We don't know in what tighter capital and operating budget should happen. I think it's a great idea, actually. And then in operating, we've been told, we're going to ring fence transfers to provinces. We're going to ring fence transfers to individuals. And we're not going to cut health or childcare or pharmacare. So like the denominator is getting smaller and smaller. It might be easier to achieve than you think.
Well, you might be right. A shrinking economy does help you get to 2%. Jimmy, I've got 30 seconds left. It does sound like they are looking at defense spending as a core part of industrial policy, economic growth, and building out the North. Is that what you expect to see on that stuff?
Right. This is really when we're talking about infrastructure and particularly dual infrastructure, so infrastructure that can help with getting access to critical minerals. and develop the necessary routes to export those minerals to global markets, but also that can serve in terms of assisting with military operations or implanting military infrastructure, let's say in the Arctic. So I think that's all part of the plan. But the devil's going to be in the details as well on that front, because we know that when it comes to procurement, and we look at the track record of the last 10, 15 years, it's not been pretty in terms of execution. And, you find that a lot of those ambitions, since Carney's been in place, rely on pristine execution. And we don't have any guideposts, any sign that this will be achieved and that Carney will succeed where his predecessors have failed.
Pristine execution is a phrase I'm going to steal from you, Jimmy Jean. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your time. You and Armin Yalnizyan, always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for being here again.
So there, kits and cubs, some very interesting commentary about the budget, particularly again from Armin, when she's talking about all the various. Whoops. I don't know if you heard that, but a video decided to auto start on its own. So yes, when Armine is talking about all the things about the budget, what we're foregoing, we're making choices here to forego revenue at a time when we've suddenly decided, whoops, we need to spend, which does seem a little odd. Particularly, since we have a banker, but also her confirming in this section here that something that I've been saying, and actually, something confirming. Yeah, confirming is the proper word here. Let's put it this way. I'm happy to hear her say that she thinks it's a good idea to separate the capital and the operational data in the budget to give the number for each, so long as that they're put together at the end, so that the deficit is comparable to previous years, of course, but so that you can see both specifically, because it's a position that I've had since I heard that the Prime Minister mentioned it. It says, well, damn, that's a damn good idea. Why haven't we been doing that all along? And but that was just my personal instinct. So it's nice to hear someone who actually knows what they're talking about saying that they think it's a good idea too. It's like, yes, I'm on the right track. Because it's true. Pierre is going to look at the overall number and say, oh my God, this is so much terrible. But if you look at the budget in the sense that is that, there is good debt and there is bad debt, and you divide it, or there's I wouldn't say, well, there's good debt and bad debt, but in terms of the budget, I would say in this case probably, if you're taking on debt, yes, there's good debt, there's bad debt, but in terms of the numbers, there's there are things that you spend on that you have to in order to keep going day to day, and then there are things that you can spend on that are things that will allow you to have, hopefully, if all goes right, more money to spend on things, and to be able to see the budget in that way specifically. How much does it keep to just keep? How much does it cost to keep the lights on? And then what are we doing to make our lives better? And how much are we putting into that? And what is that returning? It gives a much clearer picture of what the government is doing with your dime on your time, and whether or not it is something that is more in your best interest, rather than having it all blended together and just saying that this is the budget. Seeing both parts is definitely a good idea, and does just the increased transparency is good. And it's probably good for international markets as well, in terms of deciding whether or not Canada is a good bet. Is Canada itself running efficiently? Yes. Oh, okay. And let's see, what are they working on? Oh, well, that sounds like a good project in a country that's running efficiently. Let's invest there. Right? There's also more talk when we're hearing about these projects as well that are coming up. So that give a sense that there is an even broader strategy. I think I may have mentioned it, but like, for example, on SMR technology, and just overall larger CANDU reactor technology, that's technology that we can export. If we do make carbon capture and storage work much more efficiently than it has been recorded to be working as of late, that is intellectual property that we would be able to market and sell, right? So there's not only when he's talking about climate competitiveness as a strategy, it's not only being able to offer other nations source materials that are low carbon so that, you know, they can make the claims that they are reducing their emissions as well, and that they can contribute in such a way. And that also makes it such that, we're able to trade in as many countries as possible. Um, so it's not only about just having that, it's not only about having the most carbon efficient production methods here so that we can reduce our our contribution to reducing climate emissions so that we could take care of that here. But it's also if we're able to develop new technologies, new IP in this field that can then be marketed and exported, and sold. That's another revenue stream. So he's really thinking on several levels. And a lot of the projects that he has chosen open up the doors to that as well. So as we mentioned, right, with the is he going to be green? You know, each of these things come with their ups and downs, right? Nuclear, there are other types of concerns, right? But it is less polluting than fossil fuels. The Wind West project, that is going to be has an environmental aspect to it. If the pathways thing does work in carbon capture and storage, can improve the technology, can actually be a significant thing. There's a green aspect in there. The zero emission copper operations. There's this, so adding all those elements together like this does create uh, a different type of structure that he's saying that it's not working by interdictions, but it's working by investments and making us a desired place with which to do business. Because if we can offer those services at low carbon at competitive prices, because then all of a sudden we're the belle of the ball, right? So it's a good strategy. It's a good overall strategy. I you know, I'm not as good a strategist as that, so I'm sure there's maybe an element that I'm missing, or there's a blind spot, or there's something I don't see, or there's a gap that needs to be filled. Like I said, I've noticed one gap in terms of taking care of people that might be there, but in this whole thought process, there might be a gap that I'm not thinking of, or something that depends on somebody that is not us that could make all of that, make us trip over ourselves. Uh, but at the moment, I'm not seeing it. But that's why I keep listening to better minds than mine. So if somebody is seeing it, then I can find out about it and then bring it to you. But so far, I haven't come across the conversation yet. Um, but I'm sure there has to be something, right? It's kind of hard to plan for absolutely everything, but then again, maybe he's just that good. Who knows, right? He has way more experience than I do. I'll give him that. So, but yeah, these elements are positive, right? But that you are going to have the leader of the opposition just look at the overall number and say, "Oh my God, this amount of spending is ridiculous." But then, the next follow-up obvious question is then what in this would you not spend on? Would you not do the pathways thing? Because there is no pipeline without the pathways thing. So do we not do that? No. So do we not do Wind West? Do you not want one project out east to supply 27% of our energy? Do we not do the copper mine? Do we not do the ports so that once we have product to ship to all these international markets that we're developing relationships with, that we can actually ship them there? Do we not do, right? He's going to complain. Do we not fund the military? Do we not meet our NATO target? Do we not build the homes? So he's got to have a hard time finding something to say that we should not be doing while he's criticizing the number. That's also kind of clever on the part of the Prime Minister and the Liberals at the moment, which kind of creates the very, 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 very smooth segue. It probably would have been smoother had I not said it was a segue. Note to self. All right. To the sort of second topic that I wanted to discuss a little bit with you today. I don't know if you saw the. Oh my God, I forgot all about the Christopher Freeland thing as well. Okay. There was an at issue that came out lately, and Andrew Coyne had made some. Yes, I know, but you know how I feel about Andrew Coyne, right? What I say is like, when he is on, he is on. He is so on. And when he is off, I find it hard how somebody can actually be that off by such a wide margin, especially because when he's on, he's on. But in this discussion, there was something, two things he said that made me, it was something I was thinking, and I may have hinted at it in my comments, in my commentary, but I didn't have necessarily all the words uh, to sort of. It was something I would probably need to think on a little bit more to be able to like present a fully cogent thing piece with examples. And in these two interventions, Andrew Coyne essentially does it here. Um, the whole question here, Pierre's ambition is he believes, he appears to believe, I can't say what he believes, he appears to believe, based on his behaviors and his pronouncements, um, that because he was the leader of the opposition and that he got over 40%, and all the things that he says when he's shining, that when he's buffing the shiniest silver medal in Canadian political history, talking about the election result, that it was just like there were just because of the extraordinary circumstances with Trump and the way that Trudeau left and that Mark Carney was just the guy that, it, he would have won were it not for these extraordinary curveballs. And since those extraordinary curveballs are not going to be there next time, we're going to be used to Trump and Trump will have done what he's done by then. Carney will not be new and shiny anymore. And maybe we'll have made a decision or two that pissed people off. That if I just keep doing what I'm doing, I'm just so close. I just let me stay and keep doing what I'm doing. And next time it will work. I'm just right. There's that thinking, and there's some tiny adjustments here and there, but the overall thing is still just like as I saw it in the chat there was a clip I saw it yesterday of him being again just a big old dick with a female reporter. If there's time, I'll show the clip. It's a short one. But when it comes to coming back and his dream of being prime minister, like, is it gone for good? Now, we often look at the left, right, particularly with Justin Trudeau, because people looked at him as more of a left kind of guy, and sort of how he squeezed out the NDP. And now the NDP is down to 7 seats. And they have issues of their own because they have a leadership race to do. They'll probably have they have some financial issues to take care of. I mean, they didn't get, 15% in many very ridings to get the election Canada refund. They no longer have official party status, so there's some funding for activities that they no longer get, and they usually finance their elections by taking a mortgage against the headquarters. I believe they're the only party that actually owns their headquarters outright. But without that, Elections Canada refund money, and now having to spend more of their money just to operate because they don't get the parliamentary funds for being an official party. And well, when you get down to that many seats and you're leaderless, your fundraising might not be as strong as it normally is. Well, all of a sudden, paying back that mortgage becomes a little bit, the loan on that mortgage. Uh, uh, Sorry, not the mortgage, the loan against your property. All of a sudden, becomes a little trickier. And you might not be in the mood to go to an election right away in that sense. Um, so, they've got their things to deal with there. But when it comes to the conservatives here, um, if Mark Carney is being seen as a progressive conservative in the manner that he is going about his business, and he's seen as being a pretty good and effective and thoughtful and calm one, rational, sane, not flying off the handle, doesn't get into all the identity stuff, or at least the hateful identity stuff. Um, there are a lot of moderate conservatives, who are parking their votes with Pierre, who may not feel the need to park their votes with Pierre. So it could be that the Liberal Party is doing to the Conservative Party on the right in this mandate what it did to the New Democrats on the left. The question becomes is Pierre Poilievre being actually strategically squeezed further to the right and being forced to say things that he probably normally wouldn't say, and to go further in his policy pronouncements that he probably wouldn't go? And is that perhaps deliberate in order to ensure that he does not win the next election? Now, we know he's competing for the leadership of his party, which means that he has to tack further right. Because, now, let me rephrase that. He doesn't have to tack further right because everybody's saying that he pretty much has it in the bag. So, but Pierre loves a sure thing, and he definitely loves to overcompensate. So, he's going to go further than he needs to go, and he's going to say some things, right? Um, Wanting to gut the temporary foreign worker program completely is just not a serious policy position at all. But he needs to say that because, it's anti-immigrant type thing, right? That his base loves, particularly if he's trying to secure that leadership win in his party. But it's an unserious position, and it's so far right, and it's unserious for a specific reason. I was watching some data from the United States, and they were saying because their unemployment rate is so much lower than ours, and they were looking at the what's called the prime age employment rate or labor participation rate. So because a lot of people are looking at the labor participation rate and they say, "Oh my God, it's going down, it's going down, it's going down," but you also have to factor in that we have like a demographic thing, right? We have an aging population. I think in the United States, 2.2 million people retired last year, right? And um, the participation rate has been going down since 2001 constantly because there are just more people retiring. There's about 40% of the United States population that is not working at the moment, right? But of people 25 to 54, which they call the prime employment age, 83% of those people are working. So there's not a lot of people to take on the other jobs. So when Trump is saying, we're going to build all these plants and we're going to build all these things, right? Who's going to build them? Because 83% of the population is employed in that prime age. Who's going to build those things for you? So his anti-immigration policy is directly affecting his economic policy, the possibility of that happening. So I thought, well, in Canada, our unemployment rate is 7.1, which is significantly higher. So maybe our number is different. But I did a little look, and according to stats, doing the math with the Statistics Canada data, says our employment rate from the 25 to 54-year-old age group is also in the 83% range. So with Pierre Poilievre going around the country saying we need to scrap the temporary foreign worker program, when our prime working age population is already 83% employed and we have all these big projects that we want to do, it's just dumb. It's completely dumb. Now, do we need more housing to be able to accommodate them? Better healthcare services, and of course they need them and all that kind of stuff. Yes, absolutely, but that's a provincial job. The provinces are not preparing for what it is they need. So it's a completely unserious policy position, but it's one that's very, 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 very right wing. And he is being forced into it. So I got Andrew Coyne here, and he's talking about this phenomenon. He's raising it in the issue in the two clips that I'm going to show you. And then it just he's mentioning it, and then it's made me stop. Is this the fact that Pierre is saying more things from the right? Because it's not just because he might be being pushed into it by the fact that the Liberal Party is taking up so much side space on the right at the moment. Let's take a look.
Everybody back. Chantal, Andrew, Althea. I mean, I almost just want to say to all three of you, so what has changed over the summer? What is different now? And how will that shape what we might see on Monday? So I'll start with you on that, Andrew.
Well, we've got a little bit more of a picture of the government's agenda. Over the summer months, we heard about the rapid spending increases that had really only been hinted at in the election campaign. In fact, nothing of the scale that was subsequently announced. Similarly, we're now hearing or heard over the summer months about big spending cuts to make room for those spending increases. So we'll see the scale of those. So they're starting to fill in the gaps, but it's still pretty early days. A lot of the summer was frittered away on not particularly successful talks with the Americans on the trade front. I can't really blame whoever would be the prime minister in that case. It would be extremely difficult to make any progress with Donald Trump as a negotiating partner. But that took up a lot of the oxygen. And of course, we now have Pierre Poilievre back in the House of Commons. He was kind of set on his back foot after that election campaign. That took a lot of his energies and thing. And he still has to face this leadership review in January. I think the biggest problem he's facing is the Liberals seem to be moving pretty sharply to the right, taking up a lot of space that might have been occupied by the Conservatives, and it's forcing him to go even further to the right to take up policy stances that he knows the Liberals can't follow him on.
Yeah, they do seem to be continuing sort of what they did during the election, eating his lunch a little bit, Althea, whether it be on.
So there you go. That was the first hint of it that Mr. Coyne mentioned. And then further on in the segment, he mentions it well, and then you're actually gonna see me fast forward through it. And this one here starts with a clip of Pierre saying something, which is I was surprised to hear. I'm glad he said it. I was surprised to hear him say it. But I'm glad he said it, and I hope he does keep saying it. I don't think it's going to matter much to the people who vote for him, but it's something he does need to keep saying.
At issue, the Temporary Foreign Workers Program. Conservatives have upped their calls to scrap the program, blaming the government.
I would say to everybody, don't blame immigrant people. My wife is an immigrant. The people did not cause this problem. It is the Liberal government.
The Prime Minister says changes to the immigration system are needed.
It's clear that we have to work to continue to improve our overall immigration policies.
So what's been made of the Conservative focus on this program and on immigration? We'll bring everyone back for one more round. Chantal, Andrew, and Althea. Althea, what do you understand of why the Conservatives are focusing on this program in particular, but also they really want to make immigration a central issue coming back to the House?
I think it's popular for them. I think it helps drive engagement. I think it will help Mr. Poilievre in the Conservative Leadership Review in January. I think it's also something that they can help them fundraise on. But it's also a policy stance that, frankly, if Pierre Poilievre had been elected Prime Minister, he would not take. Calling for the complete elimination of the program is something that no Prime Minister would do. And, even Justin Trudeau, when he was in opposition, railed against this program, criticized it heavily. Mr. Carney, when in his previous jobs, have also criticized this program. There are a lot of problems with the program, starting with the migrants themselves, who are often abused. Mark Miller, when he was immigration minister, was planning on bringing in reforms that would allow people to have open permits within their sector so they could move around in case there's like a bad apple employer. There's a lot of fraud in the system that needs to be cleaned up, but the idea that you would completely wipe it out when there actually is a need, especially in the regions, that's not like a responsible stance from a sitting Prime Minister. So I think it's also being struck as a policy positions that the Conservatives know the Liberals won't follow.
But it's also because, Andrew, we are seeing and have seen for some time concerns around immigration in public opinion polling in a way that we hadn't seen in a while. And I guess it's trying to tap into some of that anxiety probably too.
Yeah, I appreciate him saying that don't blame immigrants themselves, but he's not going to turn away the votes of people who are blame immigrants. So it can't lose for him in that sense, that he taps into partly that anxiety around immigration in general, which, to be fair, this particular program and a couple of other programs that the Liberals let get out of control. I'm in favor of high immigration, but high but controlled immigration, and it was hard to say that the system was really well controlled. The problem he's facing is the Liberals have already tighten up these programs quite considerably. I mean, in addition to the temporary foreign workers, he's been saying we need hard caps so that the population of the country actually falls in absolute terms. That's where we're headed this year. For the first time in our history, the population is actually going to fall. So if he's going to continue to differentiate himself, as Althea said, he has to go where the Liberals will not go. And in this case, it's promising to scrap a program altogether that really just needs to be, well, it's already been substantially reformed, probably could do with some further reforms.
Chantal?
There you go. So if this dynamic of taking up, that Pierre keeps on saying that the Liberals steal his ideas. Let's say it was true that they were all Pierre's ideas, and Liberals were stealing them and implementing them well. And then Pierre is turning around and says, well, you need to go faster. You need to go bolder. You need to go bigger. You need to be sharper. You need to, the cuts need to be deeper. Everything just needs to be more. At some point, I mean, not that he doesn't already sound like a caricature and cartoon character, but he starts to sound like a caricature and cartoon character. All of a sudden, he's going to start losing the confidence of the business community because there's nobody that's in the business community that's going to support the policy of scrapping it altogether. It's needed. Why would you put your backing behind that type of person, right? Who's making these types of claims? If this happens over and over and over again on several different policy planks, yesterday we presented the whole justice thing, and I said, I don't see how the Conservatives could not support this. Well, if they decide to go that it's not enough and it's not, and this is just a trick or it's a trap or route with that, and everybody sees, we should be doing things to say that, on intimate partner violence, we should be making sure that revenge porn is not a thing. Yes, we should be doing things that keep kids who are online much safer. Yes, we should be, reforming bail in this type of way for violent criminals. Yes, we should. Whatever it is that's in there, yes, we should have higher penalties for extortion. uh, as part of the, that's probably part of the foreign interference response. Where do the conservatives go if they don't say yes to these types of things? Right? So if on policy after policy plank, the liberals keep on occupying that space, showing that they're willing to give a good portion of conservative voters some of the conservatism they seek without the crazy, for lack of a better word, or without the anger and the negativity and the hostility, rather than crazy. They might like that, especially if it comes with competence. They might like that. After 2, 3, 4 years of Pierre basically screaming into the wind tunnel about how everything is awful and panicking and trying to make people pump fear and inject fentanyl into the public discourse, they're just putting their heads down, doing the work, and remaining calm and giving conservative Canadians enough conservative elements with regard to fiscal discipline and properly supplying them into the military and a couple of crime bills here and there to make them happy. That voter base for the Conservative Party of Canada starts to shrink pretty quickly. Pierre's dreams of becoming a prime minister fade rather rapidly. Now, his leadership, that might be one of the reasons why he asked for his leadership thing to be in Calgary and in January, rather than wait the full time into March. He probably didn't want not that much time to go by. But again, if Mark Carney is able to execute on the plan, the Prime Minister and the Liberal team and the public service and everybody that will need to be involved in private sector and public sector and NGOs and anybody, Indigenous communities altogether, if we're able to actually execute on the plan relatively well, I'm not sure where Pierre goes for those votes. Those 1 million extra votes that he says he needs to win. I don't know where he goes for them. It just seems that his pool starts to shrink. So if this is a strategic play to get him to take positions that are more extreme than he probably would if he was prime minister, and that could sink him, somebody's playing the long game here. Somebody's rope-a-doping Pierre, if that is indeed the case. So, but those two comments from Andrew Coyne just opened that door. It's like, oh, I just saw the fact that, okay, he's occupying a little more progressive conservative space, which could make it trickier. But if this is an actual deliberate strategy to push him further right, knowing his personality, that he's always just going to go negative and he's always going to be, so, okay, if you're going to go negative, then let's make you sound ridiculous. More ridiculous than you already sound to us. But obviously ridiculous, so those who hadn't heard it yet can really spot it from the back rows. That's pretty damn freaking clever. And it almost kind of makes me wish that that's actually what's going on, that somebody was smart enough to think about that. All right. One last thing, because I almost forgot about mentioning it myself. A lot happened. Yesterday, Chrystia Freeland announced that she would be resigning from cabinet. Now, this is the second time she has done this. Of course, she did it right before the fall economic statement last time, and that was a move that was a little more politically kinetic, as it ended. It resulted in the end of the tenure of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. This is totally different as a reason. And I would like to, there is her letter. Unfortunately, on the platform that I am looking at it at the moment, it does not come out clear because the lettering is too small and there is no way to make it bigger. So I am going to go to the Facebook page and hopefully it will come up. It comes up the exact same way. So it's almost impossible to read. Unfortunately, oh, there's the Zoom. Silly me. Now I got it. Okay. She writes, Dear neighbors, dear Canadians, with tremendous gratitude and a little sadness, I have decided to step down from cabinet today and turn the page on this chapter in my life. I do not intend to run in the next federal election. I am forever grateful to my constituents for trusting me and electing me 5 times. I would like to thank Prime Minister Mark Carney and Prime Minister Trudeau for the privilege of serving in their cabinets over the past decade.